Part 3 continued. The hum of the key reverberated through the station, filling the crew of the Explorer with equal parts awe and dread. The crystalline artifact's energy cascaded outward, a visible ripple cutting through the black void of space. Yet the glow was unsteady, as though struggling against an unseen force. Dralnor clenched his fists, standing beside Kira at the console. "It's doing something," Kira muttered, her voice strained. "But it's incomplete. The void is pushing against the field. It's not strong enough." Dralnor's stomach tightened. "What are we missing?" Kira frantically scrolled through lines of ancient human code displayed on the console. The humans left instructions, but they fragmented them. "There's a sequence needed to stabilize the key, a sequence we haven't fully decrypted." Before Dralnor could respond, Lynn's voice crackled over the comms. "Dralnor, we've got a problem. Sensors are picking up the void's entities entering the anomaly. It's coming for the station." The blood drained from Dralnor's face. Void entities were the nightmare form of the consuming force, a terrifying blend of shadow and raw destruction. He turned to Vokar, whose expression was grim. "How much time do we have?" Dralnor asked. "Not enough," Lynn replied. "They'll breach the perimeter within minutes." Dralnor's gaze swept the crew. "Then we fight. We hold them back as long as we can." Kira hesitated, torn between the console and the looming threat. "I need time to finish decoding the sequence. If we don't stabilize the key, it won't matter how many void offspring we kill. They'll just keep coming." "Then you get us that sequence," Dralnor said firmly. "Vokar and I will handle the rest." The station shuddered under another tremor, the vibrations rattling through their boots. The key pulsed weakly, struggling to resist the encroaching void. Dralnor and Vokar rushed to the outer chamber where the first signs of the void breach appeared, a gash of inky black tearing through reality itself. Its creatures came through, grotesque and otherworldly. They weren't bound by the laws of physicality, their forms shifting and flickering in impossible ways. Dralnor raised his plasma rifle, steadying his aim as the first entity lunged forward. His shot connected, and the creature exploded into shards of darkness before reforming moments later. "These things don't stay down," Vokar growled, firing off his own round. His weapon glowed white-hot, the discharge blasting another void creature apart, though it too began to reform. "They're feeding off the key's instability," Dralnor said grimly, recalibrating his rifle. "We need to buy Kira more time." In the command chamber, Kira's fingers flew across the console, the ancient human schematics unfolding like a maddening puzzle. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she muttered calculations under her breath. Each fragment of the missing sequence she unlocked brought her closer to the solution. But it was a race against time. Lynn's voice came through again, sharp with urgency. "The anomaly's destabilizing. Whatever the key is doing, it's drawing void energy toward us like a magnet." Kira bit her lip. "The key is reacting to the void. It's trying to generate a containment field, but without the sequence, it can't focus the energy. I just need a little longer." Outside, the battle intensified. More void beings poured through the breach, their screeches an eerie sound that reverberated through the station's metal walls. Dralnor and Vokar fought side by side, the plasma rounds from their weapons cutting through the encroaching darkness. Yet for every creature they destroyed, more emerged, their movements erratic and terrifying. "Dralnor!" Vokar shouted, dodging a tendril of shadow that lashed out at him. "I don't think we can hold them much longer." Dralnor gritted his teeth. "We don't have a choice." A sudden tremor shook the station, nearly knocking both men off their feet. Back in the command chamber, Kira gasped as the console lit up with a burst of symbols. The final fragment of the sequence had been decrypted. "I've got it," Kira yelled over the comms. "But there's a catch. The sequence requires a direct power source to stabilize the key. The station's reserves won't cut it. We'll need the Explorer to feed its reactor into the system." Lynn's voice came through immediately. "Are you insane? If I reroute the reactor to the station, I'll lose control of the ship. And there's no guarantee it'll even work." "It's the only way," Kira shot back. "Without the reactor, the key won't activate, and the void will destroy us all." Another screech echoed down the corridors as the void entities pushed further into the station. Dralnor and Vokar retreated toward the command chamber, firing relentlessly as the creatures closed in. "Do it, Lynn," Dralnor shouted into his comms. "We'll figure out the rest later. Just give us the power." A pause. Then Lynn's voice came through, resigned but firm. "Rerouting now. You'd better know what you're doing." Back in the command chamber, Kira braced herself as a surge of energy coursed through the console. The key glowed brighter, its pulses now steadier and more focused. The station shook violently as the energy levels spiked, the crystalline structure humming with raw power. "It's working," Kira said, relief flooding her voice. "But the key's containment field will take time to stabilize. We need to hold out a little longer." Outside, Dralnor and Vokar stood at the threshold of the command chamber, the void creatures swarming closer. The station's defenses flickered, struggling to hold back the encroaching darkness. Dralnor fired a shot, then turned to Vokar. "This is it," he said. "We hold the line no matter what." Vokar grinned, his weapon at the ready. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the two prepared for the final stand, the key emitted a burst of light, a precursor to the containment field it was building. The crew had come too far to fail now. The void was relentless, but so were they. The battle was far from over, but in that moment they stood united, fighting for a galaxy that might never know their sacrifice. The station trembled as the first void entities breached its interior, their forms seeping through the fractures in space like black ink spreading in water. The creatures defied logic, their jagged shapes constantly shifting, as though reality itself struggled to contain their existence. They moved with eerie fluidity, their edges flickering with faint, ghostly light. Dralnor and Vokar stood at the forefront of the corridor, leading to the command chamber, weapons ready. The flickering emergency lights above cast shadows that danced alongside the encroaching darkness. Dralnor fired the first shot, the plasma bolt streaking toward the closest entity. It struck true, the creature's form splintering into shards of void-like matter. But even as it dissipated, its fragments swirled and coalesced, reforming into something even more grotesque. "They're reforming faster now," Vokar growled, unloading his rifle at the advancing horde. "This isn't just a fight, it's a damn endurance test." Dralnor reloaded his rifle, his jaw tight. "Then we don't let up. Kira needs time. We give it to her." In the command chamber, Kira's fingers raced across the console as the key's energy levels fluctuated. The glowing artifact pulsed like a heartbeat, fighting against the chaotic forces surrounding it. Kira could feel the strain in the air, the key struggling to contain the void's relentless advance. "I've stabilized part of the sequence," she muttered, her voice trembling as she worked. "But the field isn't strong enough yet. The void's interference is overwhelming the key." Lynn's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm feeding as much power as I can from the Explorer, but the ship's reactor is redlining. If you don't finish this soon, we'll lose the ship, and you with it." "I know," Kira snapped, panic edging into her tone. "I'm pushing as fast as I can." Another tremor rocked the station, and a panel behind Kira burst into flames, sparks showering the room. She didn't flinch, her focus locked on the console. The schematics displayed on the screen revealed the intricate network of the key's energy pathways, each line representing a critical link in the containment field. One error could spell disaster. In the corridor, Vokar switched to his plasma blade, its searing light slicing through a void creature that had lunged too close. The blade hummed as it cut, leaving behind trails of burning energy that momentarily disrupted the creature's form. "These things just keep coming," Vokar shouted over the din, his voice strained but defiant. "We can't hold them forever." Dralnor fired another shot, his breathing heavy. "We don't have to hold forever, just long enough." The void entities seemed to sense the urgency, their movements growing more erratic and aggressive. One creature lunged at Dralnor, its elongated limbs whipping through the air. He ducked and countered with a precise shot to its core, but even as it disintegrated, another took its place. "We're being overrun," Vokar called out, sweat dripping down his face. "Kira, how much longer?" Kira's voice came through the comms, strained but determined. "I'm nearly there. The key is stabilizing, but I need a final input to lock the sequence. Just hold on." Another wave of void creatures surged forward, their forms rippling like living shadows. Dralnor and Vokar fought with everything they had, their movements synchronized from years of combat experience. But the relentless assault was taking its toll. Dralnor's arms ached from the repeated recoil of his rifle, and Vokar's plasma blade flickered as its energy reserves dwindled. In the command chamber, Kira's screen lit up with a burst of symbols. The key's energy levels spiked, and the crystalline artifact glowed brighter than ever. Kira's heart leapt. "I've got it. The containment field is almost ready, but it's going to need a massive final surge of power to activate." Lin's voice was sharp. "Define massive." Kira hesitated. "More than the reactor can handle. If we push it too hard, it could overload and take the station with it." "Wonderful," Lin replied dryly. "But it's not like we have much of a choice, do we?" Dralnor's voice cut in over the comms. "Do it. Overload the reactor if you have to. We'll hold as long as we can." "Dralnor," Lin began, but he interrupted her. "Just do it," he barked, firing another round into a void creature that was inches away from breaking through their line. Lin sighed. "Fine, but you owe me more than one drink if we survive this." As Lin began the power transfer, the station groaned under the strain. The key's glow intensified, its pulses becoming steadier and more forceful. Kira monitored the energy flow, her hands flying across the console as she directed the surge into the key's core. Outside the command chamber, the void creatures began to falter, their forms flickering as the key's energy pushed back against their presence. Dralnor and Vokar seized the opportunity, driving the creatures away from the entrance with renewed ferocity. "It's working," Vokar shouted, his plasma blade cutting through another entity. "They're weakening." But the victory was short-lived. A massive void creature emerged from the breach, its form towering over the others. It moved with deliberate, terrifying purpose, its presence sending a chill through the air. Dralnor's grip tightened on his rifle. "Kira, whatever you're doing, finish it now." Kira glanced at the countdown on her screen. "Almost there. Just a few more seconds." The massive void creature roared, its voice a guttural echo that seemed to shake the very fabric of reality. It charged toward the command chamber, its movements unstoppable. Dralnor stepped forward, his rifle aimed squarely at the creature's center. "Vokar, with me. We end this now." As the two prepared to face the monstrous foe, the key emitted a sudden, blinding pulse of energy. Kira's voice rang out over the comms. "The containment field is activating. Hold on." The chamber filled with light as the key unleashed its power, its energy surging outward in a desperate bid to repel the void. Dralnor and Vokar braced themselves, knowing the battle was far from over. But in that moment, they stood firm, fighting for the hope that their sacrifice would mean something. The wave of energy emanating from the key rippled outward, slamming into the void creatures with devastating force. For the first time, the entities recoiled, their amorphous shapes contorting in agony as the key's containment field began to take hold. The massive void creature at the forefront hesitated, its towering form flickering, as though caught between dimensions. In the corridor outside the command chamber, Dralnor and Vokar exchanged a glance, both men breathing heavily but unwilling to lower their weapons. "Is it over?" Vokar asked, his plasma blade still humming faintly. Dralnor shook his head, his gaze fixed on the writhing monstrosity ahead. "Not yet. They're adapting. They always do." The station shuddered again as the void forces seemed to regroup, their movements becoming more erratic, but no less dangerous. The key pulsed brighter, its energy now a near-blinding beacon. In the command chamber, Kira worked feverishly to stabilize the containment field, her fingers flying across the console as alarms blared around her. "Lin!" Kira barked over the comms. "I need more power. Now. The field is expanding, but it's not covering the entire breach." Lin's voice came through, fraught with tension. "I'm giving you everything the reactor's got. If I push it any harder, we're going to blow the Explorer to pieces." "Then we blow it." Dralnor's voice cut through the comm channel, resolute and final. "The ship is secondary. This station and the key are all that matter now." Lin hesitated for a moment, her silence heavy with the weight of the decision. Finally, she replied, her voice cold and determined. Understood. Redirecting all remaining power to the key. The lights on the station dimmed to near darkness as every ounce of energy was funneled into the crystalline artifact. The key flared, its pulses now rhythmic and stable. Kira's console lit up with confirmation. The containment field is stabilizing, we're pushing them back. But outside, the void entities weren't retreating without a fight. The massive creature at their helm let out an ear-splitting roar, its form coalescing into something more solid, more defined. Tendrils of shadow lashed out, striking the station's walls and tearing through metal as though it were paper. Dralnor and Voyager stood their ground, firing relentlessly at the beast. Each plasma shot struck true, but the creature seemed almost impervious now, its movements fueled by desperation. It surged forward, barreling down the corridor toward the command chamber. "Kira!" Dralnor shouted over the chaos. "If you've got a miracle in there, now's the time." "I'm working on it," Kira snapped, her voice tight with focus. She input the final sequence, and the key responded with a deafening hum. The containment field expanded rapidly, its glowing energy forming a barrier around the station. The void creatures outside the barrier screamed as they were forced back, their forms disintegrating into wisps of darkness. But the massive creature wasn't so easily deterred. It slammed into the barrier with unimaginable force, the station rocking violently under the impact. Kira staggered, grabbing onto the console for support. The field is holding, but just barely. That thing is trying to punch through. Voyager turned to Dralnor, his expression grim. "We need to take it out, here and now. If it breaks through, Kira and the key are done for." Dralnor nodded, his jaw set. "Agreed, let's finish this." The two charged toward the creature, their weapons blazing. Dralnor aimed for its core, his plasma rounds striking the dense mass of energy at its center. Voyager leaped forward with his blade, slashing through the creature's tendrils and severing them one by one. The beast howled in rage, its form flickering as it struggled to maintain cohesion. Inside the command chamber, Kira watched the battle on the monitors, her heart pounding. The containment field was stabilizing, but she knew it wasn't enough. The key needed one final surge of energy to seal the breach entirely, but that surge would come at a cost. "Lynn," she said quietly, her voice shaking, "prepare to detonate the reactor." Lynn's response was immediate. "Are you out of your mind? That'll take out the entire station." Kira's hands trembled as she adjusted the controls. "The station's already lost if we don't stop this thing. The reactor's energy will amplify the key enough to close the breach permanently. It's our only shot." Lynn hesitated, her voice breaking. "Kira, there's no coming back from this." "I know," Kira whispered. "Just do it." Outside, Dralnor and Voyager fought with everything they had, their movements growing slower as exhaustion set in. The creature was weakening, its form destabilizing with each strike, but it was still fighting with relentless fury. "Kira, whatever you're doing, do it fast," Dralnor shouted, narrowly dodging a swipe from one of the creature's tendrils. Kira's fingers hovered over the console. She took a deep breath, her eyes locked on the key. "Goodbye," she whispered, then slammed her hand down on the final command. The station's reactor detonated with a blinding flash, the energy surge directed straight into the key. The artifact absorbed the explosion, its crystalline structure glowing brighter than ever before. The containment field expanded rapidly, engulfing the void creatures and the breach itself. The massive creature let out one final piercing scream before disintegrating into nothingness. The breach sealed with a resounding clap, and the void's presence vanished entirely. In the silence that followed, the station drifted in the void of space, its systems offline. Kira, Dralnor, Voyager, and the rest of the crew were gone, heroes whose sacrifice would never be known by the galaxy they had saved. Far away, on the now distant Explorer, Lynn sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the empty expanse of stars where the station had once been. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "They did it." And then, silence. The Explorer drifted silently through the void, its hull battered, and its systems barely functional. Lynn sat in the pilot's chair, her hands gripping the controls so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The stars outside felt colder, more distant than ever. The absence of the station, the absence of her crew, was an ache she couldn't shake. "They're gone," she whispered, her voice cracking. "All of them." Behind her, a faint crackle from the comm system interrupted the stillness. Lynn turned sharply, her heart racing. Was it possible? Could anyone have survived? She reached for the console, her fingers trembling, and adjusted the frequency. The signal was weak, distorted, and faintly familiar. "Lynn. Kira." The voice was barely audible but unmistakable. It was Dralner. "Dralner!" Lynn shouted, her voice desperate. "Where are you? What's your status?" The signal flickered, breaking into static. Then, after a few agonizing moments, Dralnor's voice returned, clearer but strained. "We didn't make it, Lynn." "Not really." Lynn froze, her heart sinking. "What do you mean? Are you alive or not?" There was a pause, and then Dralnor's voice softened. "We're here, in a way. The key, its energy didn't just destroy the void. It pulled us in. We're part of it now." Lynn's stomach twisted as the implication sank in. "You're telling me you've become—" "What? Some kind of energy? Ghosts?" "We don't know," Dralner replied, his voice tinged with resignation. "It's like being everywhere and nowhere at once. We can feel the key's presence, its purpose, and we can feel the void. It's still out there, Lynn. It's wounded, but not gone." The revelation hit Lynn like a punch to the gut. "You mean this isn't over? Everything you sacrificed, it wasn't enough?" "It bought time," Dralner said firmly. "Enough time for the galaxy to prepare. But the void, it'll try again. And when it does, the key will need someone to wield it." Lynn sat back in her chair, her mind racing. The key was gone, along with the station and the crew. If it had absorbed their essence, then what exactly was it now? A weapon? A prison? Or something far more dangerous? "I can't do this alone," Lynn said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't fight what's coming, not without you." "You won't be alone," Dralner said. "The key chose you to survive for a reason. We're still connected to it, and through it to you. When the time comes, we'll guide you." Lynn shook her head, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I don't even know what that means. Guide me? How? You're not even here." Another voice broke through the static, Vokar's. "Pull yourself together, Lynn. You've always been stronger than you think. We're counting on you to finish what we started." Lynn closed her eyes, the weight of their words pressing down on her. She wanted to scream, to cry, to curse the galaxy for its cruelty. But she couldn't. Not now. Not while the voices of her fallen crew urged her forward. The comm went silent again. The faint hum of the explorer's systems, the only sound in the cabin. Lynn stared at the empty console, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had lost everything, her friends, her purpose, her hope. And yet, the key's influence lingered, a faint warmth in the back of her mind. She stood and made her way to the viewport, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. Somewhere out there, the void was regrouping, waiting for its chance to strike again. And somewhere within her, the echoes of her crew, her family, remained. "I'll finish this," she said aloud, her voice steady. "I don't know how, but I'll find a way." In the depths of her mind, she felt a flicker of approval, a faint pulse of energy that could only be the key. It wasn't just a weapon or a relic. It was alive, in some way, and it had chosen her. The Explorer's systems flickered as Lynn powered up the engines. The ship groaned in protest, but it obeyed. She set a course for the nearest station, her resolve hardening with every passing second. As the ship accelerated, Lynn felt the faintest whisper of Dralner's voice in her mind. "We'll be with you, Lynn. Always." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Lynn allowed herself a small, bitter smile. "You better be," she muttered, gripping the controls. Because I'm going to need all the help I can get. The explorer disappeared into the star-speckled void, its lone pilot carrying the weight of the galaxy's future on her shoulders. Behind her, in the distant reaches of space, the remnants of the station and the key glimmered faintly, a reminder of sacrifice and a warning of the darkness yet to come. The explorer limped into the bustling orbit station of Keltar Nexus, a massive trading hub suspended between two suns. The station's glittering architecture sprawled across space like a web of steel and glass, illuminated by the faint glimmers of passing freighters and patrol ships. Lynn guided her battered vessel toward a docking bay, her hands steady, despite the dull ache of exhaustion seeping into her bones. The docking clamps engaged with a hiss, and Lynn let out a shaky breath. She wasn't sure what she hoped to find here. Supplies, allies, or maybe just a brief reprieve from the crushing silence of the ship. But her resolve was clear. The galaxy had to be warned. The void wasn't finished, and if it came back stronger, they wouldn't survive another encounter. As the hatch opened, Lynn was met with the chaotic hum of the Nexus. Traders barked over comms, and maintenance crews darted between ships, their tools glinting in the artificial light. The air smelled faintly of oil and ozone, a stark contrast to the sterile silence she had grown used to. Lynn stepped onto the platform, her gear slung over her shoulder. Her first stop was the Nexus Council Chamber, a towering spire at the station's core, where representatives of countless species negotiated trade routes and alliances. If anyone could rally the galaxy's forces, it was them. She approached the chamber's entrance, where a pair of hulking guards stood sentinel. Their insectoid features twitched as she approached, their compound eyes reflecting her weary form. "State your business," one of them rasped, its voice a low buzz. "I have urgent information for the council," Lynn said firmly. "It's about the void." The guards exchanged a glance before one of them gestured for her to follow. "You'll wait until the council grants an audience," it said, its tone curt. Lynn was led into a massive antechamber, its walls adorned with holographic banners displaying the flags of member worlds. Dozens of diplomats and emissaries milled about, their conversations a cacophony of languages. Lynn felt out of place in her scuffed flight suit, but she squared her shoulders and approached the nearest terminal to submit her request. Hours passed. Lynn's patience wore thin as she watched petty disputes and trade negotiations take precedence over the galaxy's survival. Finally, a clerk approached her, his avian features sharp and his robes immaculate. "The council will see you now," he said, his tone clipped. Lynn was ushered into the chamber, a vast circular room with representatives seated in raised tiers. Each member was holographically projected, their physical locations scattered across the galaxy. At the center of the room stood a single podium, illuminated by a harsh spotlight. Lynn stepped into the light, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes on her. "State your name and purpose," boomed the voice of the presiding speaker, a towering reptilian figure whose dark maroon scales gleamed under the light. "Captain Lynn Torren of the Explorer," she began. "I've come to warn you about the void. It's not gone, it's regrouping. And if we don't act, it will destroy everything." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some representatives leaning forward in interest while others scoffed. A feline envoy from the Sarac coalition spoke first, her voice dripping with skepticism. "The void was sealed. The station and the key were destroyed. What evidence do you have to the contrary?" Lynn clenched her fists, anger simmering beneath her calm facade. "I was there. My crew gave their lives to close the breach, but the void wasn't eradicated. It's weakened, yes, but it's still out there. And it will come back." Another voice cut in, this one from a wiry humanoid with translucent skin. "If this is true, why bring this to us? Why not alert your Terran alliance? Surely humans would handle their own mess." Lynn's jaw tightened. "Because humanity is scattered, and the alliance is fractured. We've been reduced to whispers and myths. I'm here because this isn't just humanity's fight, it's everyone's." The chamber erupted into debate, voices overlapping as representatives argued over the credibility of Lynn's claims and the feasibility of taking action. Lynn stood silently, her frustration mounting. She had expected resistance, but not this level of apathy. Finally, the presiding speaker raised a clawed hand, silencing the room. "Captain Torin, your claim is extraordinary, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Do you have any proof of the void's continued existence?" Lynn hesitated, her mind racing. The key's energy lingered faintly within her, a connection she could feel but not explain. But how could she prove it to them? "I don't have physical evidence," she admitted, her voice steady. "But I have my word and the scars to prove it. If you ignore this threat, it won't matter whether you believed me or not, because there won't be anyone left to argue." The room fell into uneasy silence. Finally, a hulking figure from the Vorsath Dominion spoke, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "If there is even a chance she's telling the truth, we cannot ignore it. The void nearly destroyed us once. Can we afford to take that risk again?" Others voiced reluctant agreement, but the feline envoy scoffed. "You propose to mobilize the galaxy's resources based on fear and hearsay? This reeks of Terran desperation." Lynn stepped forward, her voice rising above the murmurs. "Call it desperation if you want, but when the void comes for your worlds, you'll wish you had acted." The presiding speaker leaned forward, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "Captain Torin, we will deliberate on your claims. Until then, you are dismissed." Lynn left the chamber, her fists clenched in frustration. As she stepped back onto the bustling platform of the Nexus, she felt the faintest pulse of energy within her, a reminder that the key's essence was still with her. She would have to prepare for the worst. If the Council wouldn't act, she'd find others who would. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, and Lynn wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. To be continued in Part 4.